Hello fellow Jerry cans. Anyone who watches my video, you know I'm a big fan of the Hoenn region. I am a 1997 boy. It's my personal favorite region because I grew up with the Gen 3 games in 2003 to 2005 from age 6 to 8. I'm the biggest trumpet stan out there. So if you were to ask me what my personal favorite region is, even though I think the best game in the series is Black and White 2, my answer is Hoenn. However, when it comes to Hoenn, there is a question that is much more difficult to answer. Unlike other regions where a definite version of a game exists, Hoenn doesn't have a definite version. After all, Heart Gold and Soul Silver is the definitive Johto experience, Pokemon Platinum is the definitive Sinnoh experience, not some crappy game on Switch. But Hoenn? Obviously, the original Ruby and Sapphire is not the definitive Hoenn experience, but there's two different expansions of Ruby and Sapphire. What is the definitive Hoenn experience, third game Pokemon Emerald, or remake Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire? What is the superior Hoenn game? Now that is a damn good question. Before I go in, I must preface that I like both games. Until Gen 9, Pokemon Oras was basically the only post-Gen 5 Pokemon that I genuinely liked, and Pokemon Emerald? Hell, who doesn't like Pokemon Emerald? So this will be one hell of a fun comparison, and it will even allow me to sort my opinions on the best region. For the comparison, I'm going to compare the games in 8 categories. This video will be divided into these categories, and we're going to compare 8 parts of each game, and hopefully this will give us insight to see what their strengths or weaknesses are. Got that? Good. Oh, and I've also done a full review of Oras, so if you want to hear my detailed thoughts on the game, me rambling for an hour, links in the description. I haven't done a review yet of Pokemon Emerald, maybe I'll do that in the future sometime when I don't feel like questioning my existence. Whew boy, this one is hard to compare. Which game had the better Hoenn story, Pokemon Emerald or Pokemon Oras? You might think Gen 6 obviously will win in a landslide because it's in 3D and we got animated cutscenes with detail, but that's not really the case. You see, Pokemon Emerald felt like the ultimate Hoenn game, combining the stories of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire into one game. Ruby had Team Magma trying to control Groudon, Sapphire had Team Aqua trying to control a Kyogre. So in Emerald, we had both teams going after each respective legendaries, and you had to try to stop them both. There was also the whole Mew part of the story added in Emerald, where you have to summon Rayquaza to stop Groudon and Kyogre from fighting each other in the middle of Sootopolis City. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, on the other hand, chose to ignore most of these story changes from Emerald, since it's a damn Ruby and Sapphire remake, not an Emerald remake. We're back to Team Magma awakening Groudon, we're back to Team Aqua awakening Kyogre. I think the biggest story loss is with Team Magma Groudon, because in the original Ruby and Sapphire games, both Groudon and Kyogre was in Seafloor Cabin. Both Team Magma and Aqua hideouts are out in the sea because, you know, they couldn't make a separate continental lava dungeon for it due to maybe rushing or cutting corners. Emerald fixed it by making a separate hideout for Team Magma at Mount Chimney, and making Groudon be under said volcano, not under fucking ocean water. But since this is all gone, all of those pieces feel solely missing. Story events like Team Magma's takeover of Moss Deep Space Center are gone in the remake. That being said, Oras had its own fair share of additions to the story that Emerald didn't have. We got additional cutscenes that give more character to the story, like when Wally's dad and Norman discuss how nice it's being a father after you defeat Norman in Paleburg. The rivals get a proper final battle at the end of the story with fully evolved Pokemon. There are new story events like going to Southern Island. There's additional lore to the story with Pokemon multiverse stuff, and there's even new lore connection to then current region Kalos. Oras is not a lazy faithful one-to-one Ruby and Sapphire remake. But all of this still doesn't amount to the awesome things that happen in Emerald in the end. Adapting Ruby and Sapphire was just limiting the story, taking away the story potentials, and felt like a setback. Even though the nice additions are great, it's still painful that things are missing from Emerald and you just miss what you've lost. Like losing the awesome cutscenes, possibly the greatest Pokemon cutscene of Rayquaza dispersing Groudon and Kyogre. So even though it was hard to choose, I have to give this category to Emerald. The first category was really more about plot and events in the story, not the characters, so let's discuss them. One thing a Pokemon remake should do is fix things that are outdated. In Gen 3, the characters felt outdated. Gym leaders were basically walking around text boxes with one sprite assigned to them, and they didn't do much. Rival Wally was barely memorable and just a guy with green hair. Bro was so forgettable. Team Magma and Aqua Elements, if you were to ask their names for 2014, no one except manga fans would be able to remember their names with a gun pointed to their head because they were so forgettable. Hell, they didn't even have official character art drawn by Ken Sugimori. Ever since Generation 5 though, Pokemon has changed, characters matter now. Creating memorable husbandos or waifus have become standard now, or has upgraded the characters to modern standards, design and writing wise. The character designs actually don't feel so dated anymore. Brawly is no longer just a guy wearing a shirt, Steven actually looks handsome and not derpy. Even though this is 3DS, I like how they try to make characters cute with their chubby chibi models and their small animations. The characters have more depth. Reboot Wally is basically an entirely new character with depth. He went from a nobody to one of the most memorable rivals in the entire series. The game developers read the Adventures manga, and now Brandon or May try to date you. Pokemon Emerald didn't do much with expanding the characters. In the original Ruby and Sapphire, it was really weird that your main rival Brandon O'May fought you at Lily Cove City and completely disappeared from the game for no reason, and you could even see them use their final evolution. This could have been fixed in Emerald, but they didn't do that for some god knows reason. Oras, however, did fix it by giving you an epilogue battle with your rival after the credits roll. So, the clear winner is the remix, not the third version. I guess the only real loser is Hoenn, who didn't make it into Oras. Let's now discuss the world both games are set in, my personal favorite Pokemon region, Hoenn. Surprisingly, both Emerald and Oras have added new places or revamped areas from Ruby and Sapphire. For Emerald, there's a classic Mirage Tower that's in the desert part of Route 111, the aforementioned Team Magma hideout under Mount Chimney, a post-game cave area where you can catch a Ditto called Desert Underpass, and of course the Battle Frontier, which I'll get into deeper much later, don't you worry. Oras, there's not many new areas except for some little caves they added in while you soar in the sky with Latios or Latias, and minor sea locations for new hidden bases areas. It's really more about the revamped areas completely redone, and it's nice to see this because it's the devs trying to make usage of the more advanced graphics of the 3DS. Greatest example is of course Mauville City, which went from generic town to fucking shopping mall. Another is the abandoned shipwreck being revamped into Sea Mauville. Did you also know that the small little cave in Route 120 called Scorched Slab became a proper sized cave in Oras? Also, the dive routes in the ocean became more interesting with dive trainers being added in too. However, there were some areas in Oras that felt like they were gutted. Biggest example is of course Mew Mauville, which was heavily nerfed from a large proper dungeon to basically a room in the remake. Also, that great fucking Mach Bike puzzle in Sky Pillar in Gen 3, that was also gutted to some generic ladder area, which was a shame. Also, there's Granite Cave. Well, even though the cave remains mostly the same, they changed it so that it's no longer a dungeon you need to traverse to progress through the story, but instead an optional exploration area. This is a tough call, but I'll give the point to Emerald. The new areas in Emerald I really liked, and I felt sorely missing in Oras, and some of the changes in Oras felt unnecessary and annoyed me. What about the Pokemon you catch in these games? Well, it's really no fucking contest. I think Oras is completely superior than Emerald. First reason is obvious. Somehow out of all 5 Pokemon remakes we had so far, Oras is the only one where they incorporated every Mew Pokemon evolution for the region into their regional decks. Biggest example is Roselia. Budew and Roserade are now part of the local Hoenn decks. And it's not like in Heart Gold where you can only get certain evolutions with trade or in the post game, i.e. you can't evolve Magneton and Johto. They're now part of the main game and the NPCs use them, like Wally uses Gallade, and Elite for Glacia uses Frostlass. Second reason, Oras is the final Pokemon to have a national dex, and it's something that should be noted after all the recent modern bullshit. They made it so that you can catch all Pokemon that existed, only with the 4 Gen 6 games. So you see so many Gen 4 and 5 Pokemon in the post game. There are so many Pokemon to catch in Oras, it's absolutely worthwhile to complete the national dex in this game in my opinion. For Emerald, just completing the national dex in the game is almost like fucking impossible. Absolute CPT to complete because the lack of backwards compatibility to the Gen 2 games and the need to get the GameCube games. Anyways, Oras does not just beat Emerald, but it might be the best Pokemon game in existence to play if you're a collector at heart and like completing the Pokedex. This one is obvious. I did mention in the ORAS review, but Pokemon ORAS had 2 kryptonites that stopped it from being a perfect remake. And the first one is of course difficulty balancing. As a refresher, Generation 6 was the generation where Game Freak changed the EXP share, so every single Pokemon on the team got EXP instead of just one. At least you could turn it off unlike Gen 8 and 9. Anyways, despite Pokemon growing very quickly, the NPC's Pokemon feel underleveled. You become overleveled quickly, and because of this, Pokemon ORAS is probably tied with XY as the easiest Pokemon games. It's not just the level that's the problem. Why does Courtney and Matt only use one Pokemon on their team when that was not a thing in the original games? Why does Wasa only have Magnemite, Voltorb, and Magneton? Do you leave your Manectric at home, bro?
Hey, if you forgot it, it probably wasn't all that important.
Yeah, I guess.
On the flip side, Pokemon Emerald possibly might be one of the most difficult Pokemon games that was officially made by Game Freak. The aforementioned Watson does use a Manectric, and he has 4 Pokemon even though he's only the 3rd gym leader. Winona uses freaking 5 Pokemon on her team in Emerald when she's only the 6th gym leader, and remember that 5 Pokemon teams are usually reserved for Elite 4s. And there's of course Hayden and Lita. They are one of the most difficult Pokemon gym battles in history in my opinion. In Vanilla Ruby and Sapphire and ORAS, this fight was a cakewalk because they only used 2 Pokemon, but now they use 4 Pokemon. That fucking Claydol using Light Screen to make their team bulky, and that fucking Zaytu spamming Combine, if you're not prepared, you'll be in for a rough fight, and a lot of Nuzlocke runs end right here. All in all, Pokemon Emerald is a brutal game, but as a long-time veteran, it's not some bullshit difficulty created by overleveled bosses like USUM. It felt like a fair but difficult Pokemon game. So yeah, difficulty-wise, Emerald knocks ORAS out of the park. The main structure for Pokemon Emerald and ORAS is quite the same like all Pokemon games. In my opinion, it's really more about the side content that really makes a Pokemon game real good or bad, so let's compare those. First of all, there's Pokemon contests. I have not much to say about Pokemon contests. I never really liked them in the original Gen 3 release, and the remake didn't really add anything much either. I guess the graphics are a bit cooler and Brandon or May get to wear costumes, but come on. What happened to the Jasmine cameo in the original? Anyways, both I don't care about. However, secret bases I do care about. In the Hoenn games, you can create your own little secret bases to decorate. Remember in the faithful Gen 4 remakes, they weren't goddamn faithful and butchered the secret bases there? Well, in ORAS, they made secret bases more cooler by adding a bunch of more features. They assigned a new NPC character to deal with secret bases, and best of all, they made it so that you can set up trainers and make your base a mini gym with you as a gym leader. Not only that, you could share your QR codes of your bases, and I hope this feature still lasts even when 3DS Online is dead. The bottom screen ORAS was the best feature, however. They still kept the excellent Pokemon Amy, Super Training, and Best Online System Ever PSS from X and Y. However, they added probably one of my favorite Pokemon games of all time too, the Dex Nav. With this, catching Pokemon has never been as fun and rewarding, while at the same time feel less grindy. The Dex Nav alone made the remake worth it for me. Pokemon Emerald feature-wise wasn't too different from Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. The contest berry making thing was the same, yada yada. So I give the point to ORAS here. But Emerald has a clear edge with features, of course, and that happens after the credits roll. And of course I'm talking about... Let's talk about both games post-game. First, the obvious. The other kryptonite that ruined ORAS from being a perfect remake. The lack of the battle frontier. The original Battle Frontier in Pokemon Emerald was so much fun and one of the most difficult challenges Pokemon ever. It was built for the hardcore Pokemon player, and it sure plays like it because you could grind hundreds of hours into it. The Hoenn games didn't really have a post-game area to explore like Gen 2 did, with an entire freaking other region, but it clearly made it up with the Battle Frontier. The Battle Frontier was designed for completionists to sink hundreds of hours into the game. The footage you're seeing is from the legendary Pokemon speedrunner Worcester. Okay, so you know how most Pokemon games take like an hour or two to complete in a speedrun? Guess how long it takes to speedrun the Battle Frontier? While this time is outdated now, the first ever completed speedrun of all 5 gold prints in Pokemon Emerald was over 19 hours. 19.
Oh my god, no. Go back down.
You know you're in for some real shit when the first split in the speedrun is beating the goddamn champion. And the only run that beat the 19 hours as of making of this video, 17. Needless to say, Battle Frontier was one beefy content for the most hardcore Pokemon players.
No, dude. No, dude. I'm gonna have to hit with Metagross.
But the Battle Frontier was not made in the remakes, and they even had the audacity to tease the Battle Frontier by creating a model and saying the Battle Frontier project has started. What the fuck?
Thanks for the tease, assholes!
I think this quote is equivalent to a quote like, somehow Palpatine returned, as in people keep reusing them to sum up the main problem of a franchise. For Star Wars that might mean the lack of creativity, and for Pokemon it means lazy rushing and cutting corners. And they're both fine statements really. Emerald didn't just have the Battle Frontier too. They also ported that trainer tower thing from Sebi Islands in Fire and Leaf Green to Route 111 as Trainer Hill, so you can do some challenges. The Safari Zone also got expanded after the post-game, so you can catch some of the elusive Johto Pokemon. And last but not least, Emerald also had Gym Leader rematches, which was a first for the series. You could re-battle gym leaders who had competitive teams for a real challenge, and see how formidable they really can be. The devs really weren't fucking around with Emerald. It might be the most hard Pokemon game to 100%. These gym leader rematches are unforgiving and brutal as hell. Oras didn't have any of these. I could excuse everything else, but not having the gym leader rematches or the Battle Frontier? For the former, I cannot understand why it's not there. It's not something difficult to plan when freaking even BDSP had it. I don't think it's too difficult to program in a post-game rematch with a competitive team when fan modders do that all the time. And for the latter, they have stuff like the Battle Cafeteria and Inverse Battle in Oras. By using these gimmicks that everyone forgot about and made it into proper Battle Frontier facilities, if they put like 2 months more of development time to create models and characters, they could have easily made a Battle Frontier. With the Battle Frontier missing, we missed out peak gaming moments like this in Oras.
Fuck! I'm probably not gonna kill him now. Please. Oh, you've got to be fucking kidding me. You've... Wait, kill yourself. Yes!
Ugh. Instead, we have the Delta episode. While I admit it's really cool and a highlight moment when we go outside of space while riding on Rayquaza to fight Deoxys, in the end, Delta episode is just a 2-hour story mission. It's not that difficult and it's over too quick, and cannot match the time and quality of the Emerald post-game. And there's also catching all the legendaries thing, I guess, which at the time was a nice feature because it was there so you can complete the Pokedex, not because like in modern Pokemon games it's just there for nostalgia and stupid people to grind for. Still, we didn't even get new remixes for these legendaries team battle, and they're not the Battle Frontier. Clear winner is Emerald. But gameplay, story, content doesn't just make up the game. What about the overall presentation of each game? Well, in the end, Emerald is just Ruby and Sapphire again, except with a bit more content with some things fixed. An altered version of game, you might say. And that's not a bad thing. Adding and fixing is what a sword game is supposed to do, not reselling the same game 2 more times without changing anything. On the other hand, Pokemon Oras is a proper remake, a reimagining of Hoenn that runs on the Pokemon X and Y engine that bridges Gen 3 to 6. And because of that, there are so many things in the remake that Emerald just doesn't have, such as Mew music. I love how they redid all the classic Hoenn music in a modern sense. I love how every character got Mew redesigns, so they're not wearing the same dated clothes for the past 20 years, and many have been reimagined. There are some real cinematic places in Hoenn where Game Freak actually utilized the 3DS's graphic capabilities to make environments colorful and memorable. So even though brief, I have to give Pokemon Oras a point because in the end, Emerald is just reselling the same game. But Oras has a clear artistic reason to exist. Developers Game Freak doing a new take on the Hoenn region, not rehashing old material to exploit the nostalgia of adults who haven't outgrown their childhood. So yeah, Oras gets a point. Now let's see. How How many points have we put up for each team? Shit, I've done all 8 points and run out of things to talk about, and we are tied at 4-4. Oh no! In conclusion, the whole exercise I've done today has proven to me that I cannot decide which is better, Pokemon Oras or Pokemon Emerald. Both games have their own strengths and weaknesses, and honestly, their strengths and weaknesses come from being a third game or a remake of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. It's really up to you to decide which is the better game. It's preference. I couldn't make up my mind, but what about you, fellow Jerrycans? Write in the comments on what you think the superior Hoenn game is and your reasoning. I would love to hear your guys' opinions. I'm really curious which will be the prevalent answer. But my conclusion is this: both are good. Both Pokemon Emerald and Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are definitive Hoenn games, and both are worth a play if you have not played any of these games for some reason. I'll leave you guys with just this. While I am sad and disappointed that we didn't get a definitive Hoenn Pokemon remake that was a proper remake of Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire and included elements of Pokemon Emerald, after seeing what Pokemon Company have done to Sinnoh, I see a silver lining. We got 2 different games with 2 different approaches on improving Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire with wildly different results, and both games are great. So I can respect both of them and enjoy both of them. I can choose what game to play if I feel like playing through my favorite Pokemon region and re-experience my childhood again. Hey, at least my favorite region didn't get raped by a garbage, unfaithful remake in a Zelda game's ripoff wannabe beta test. How to end the video? Oh yeah, I know a good way to make a decision if you can't decide between Pokemon Oras or Emerald. In Pokemon Emerald, when you move into your house in Littleroot, Vigoroths are moving your furniture, and in Pokemon Oras, Machos are moving your furniture. If you like muscles, you're an Oras stan. If you're a furry, you like Emerald. Yeah, let's go with that. Thanks for watching this video. This was a really fun topic to talk about, comparing some of my favorite Pokemon games. I do have some comparisons I could make more, such as what's the better Kanto remake? What's the definitive Alola experience? The answer is neither. Tell me your thoughts about these topics in the comment below. Oh, and I don't do sponsorships for my videos, but I can do an ad for my own stuff, right? So I'm gonna sell out by saying I have a wonderful Discord server. Link is down in the description. Join if you want to chat with me anytime. Bye bye.